Alright guys, it's BO2 and welcome to today's gameplay commentary. Now this video, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, okay? I'm not going to lie to you. This is a long video. It's going to be, I imagine, one of the longest videos I've ever done. But there's reason behind that, okay? There's reason behind the madness, the content of what it is I'm going to say, the commentary topic itself. It's something which is very important to me. You might think I'm a nerd for doing this sort of video, but, well, whatever. If you're not willing to give this this entire video your full attention, then please just leave, just exit the video, whatever, because there's a lot of things I'm going to actually mention in this commentary topic which I think are very important and definitely need to be said amongst the community. So, you know, if I'm being honest, this commentary, I intended on doing this like a week or two ago, but things have been cropping up, work and stuff, and as you could probably tell with my channel, I've been a bit inactive lately, so apologies for that. And essentially, guys, what it is, I wanted to let my ideas mature so I could construct a better overall, I won't say argument, I'd say more position with regards to what it is I want to say, like the stance at which I'm coming from. So hopefully you will give it your full attention. I really do value what it is you've got to say with some of the things I mentioned. Let me know in the comment section below, and without further delay, I'll get onto this commentary topic which concerns gameplay standards. So, given the current gameplay climate on YouTube right now, if you wish to join this like collective and be recognised as a kind of content maker known for the gameplay, you're somewhat forced to buy into this whole particular like gameplay boosting playstyle of spawn trapping with support runners, because essentially, guys, the standards are set so high right now. I mean, scorelines are so inflated that running in the traditional sense seen back in Black Ops 1, or even solo for that matter, you just simply can't compete against these guys that are currently posting these 200 plus gameplays. I mean, essentially, guys, this is what it boils down to. By running support, you're able to exploit certain aspects of the game, so much so that it enables you as a gameplay getter far more control over the likelihood of you achieving an uploadable gameplay. Specifically, for example, and this is a prominent one, postponing the length of the game by avoiding capturing all the domination points. And this is something which, in my experience, is proving extremely frustrating, seeing as, you know, like random teammates are always eager to attain that triple cap. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are variables which you can't control, such as the playstyle of the enemy team you're against, people leaving the game, people dashboarding, the connection to an extent, but, you know, by running in a stacked, well-organised, well-disciplined party, you're decreasing certain variables from costing you what could be the opportunity to get a gameplay in that particular lobby. I mean, it's as simple as that. You're effectively manipulating the game so much so that you're providing yourself a greater chance of success. So rather than coming across and maybe getting, for example, I don't know, one gameplay over a period of 2 to 3 hours, you could in fact pull off, for instance, I don't know, 10 gameplays or even more, which are worth saving in the same amount of time. And for me, there's three key things which stand out. That the three contributors for the decline in YouTube gameplay credibility and quality, in my opinion, are firstly the introduction of reverse boosting brought in by Black Ops 2. Secondly, the PlayStation 3, and lastly, Amp Clan, and I'm going to try and delve into each one right now. So, reverse boosting. Reverse boosting is yet again another feature that can be exploited, and has been so much so that it has somewhat poisoned the gameplay gaming community. Now, in case you don't know what gameplay boosting is, basically it's the process in which people actively lower the stats, specifically the score per minute, by killing themselves over and over again in games so that they are matched up against people of equally low ability the next time they're in the matchmaking. Thus, essentially putting the odds in their favour for pulling off a gameplay scene, as now you're playing against player of a lower skill than your own. And again, guys, the emphasis here is about increasing the chances of you being dealt that better hand, as it were. And, you know, there are some that say skill-based matchmaking has been removed from this matchmaking process. And yes, I'm not going to lie, I have noticed that, at least on Xbox, seeing as that's the most prominent console I play these days, there has been an evident decline of its prominence. But, you know, nevertheless, the stigma still remains. But it's important here to blame the game and not the player. And you might be asking yourself why. Well, this is because if the game didn't incorporate such monstrosities, then the player won't be able to exploit them. It's as simple as that. For example, I'm going to give you an example, guys. Infinity Ward incorporated the utter debacle that was the one-man army noob-tube disease, which completely and utterly destroyed Modern Warfare 2, in my opinion. Yet, if they simply removed that, it would stop. It would stop players using them and exploiting that aspect. You know, it's the game developers which essentially set out the limits and parameters for how we, the players, can play the games. So, with that being said, I'll move on to the actual PS3 now. So, you're probably wondering, where does the PS3 come into all this? Well, to cut long story short, seeing as I've already done a commentary on the issue of Xbox 360 versus PS3, all I'll say is that the PS3 is an easier console to get gameplays on, purely because it has more players playing the game and contains more casual players, thus giving you a higher probability of finding that golden noob lobby that we all strive for than you would get on the Xbox 360. You know, It's all a matter of how concentrated the consoles are for number of players and skill. And it is important to note this, guys, I can't stress this enough. It's important to note that when I say the PS3 contains more shit players, that's not to say that PS3 players are shit. You know, there's a clear distinction there which needs to be made, and one which I don't want you to confuse. And lastly, of course, Amp Clan. Again, you might be thinking, where and why does Amp Clan come into all this? Well, Amp Clan are regarded as the record setters for gameplay. They have been ever since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and they're known to venture, or at least have ventured down these two avenues in order to achieve the gameplays. And all I'm going to say is it would be interesting to see what the console ratios are for its members, but I'd put money on there being around, I'd say, 75% or more, which call the PS3 their home, if you catch my drift. So even if you are running in 9-man parties on Xbox 360, you're still contending with these guys doing the exact same on the PS3. So yet again, increasing the pressure on you to attain such high score lines and remain in this, I don't know, this YouTube clique or trend of amazing Call of Duty pub stompers, scores of which, may I add, are extremely inflated. And you might be thinking to yourself, what do I mean by this extremely inflated? Because this is something I'll be covering a few times in this actual commentary. Well, I regard the kind of scores achieved running such methods as gameplays on steroids. Essentially, that's what I want you to take from this entire commentary. It's gameplays on steroids. Gameplays using support runners are not a true reflection of how games are played consistently and by natural means, if that makes sense. I mean, you can never truly replicate the same playstyle and level of structure, order and execution playing solo that you can playing in a stacked 9-man party, you know, running support and spawn trapping. You know, consequently, gameplays that follow this pattern appear somewhat artificial and synthetic to me, and just thus should be regarded as less credible in terms of, firstly, recognition of what has been achieved, as well as true demonstration of that player's ability. So the next thing you have to ask yourself is why? You know, why do YouTubers choose to follow this path? Why did they choose to go down this route? And the only rational explanation I can think of, the only way to compete with these gameplays that are bashed out on such a regular basis, may I add, is you know, to follow in their footsteps. You have to buy into this whole notion of rocking support runners which help you spawn trap, because it's near on impossible to achieve the same standards, again quote unquote standards, as you do if you run solo, or anything less than with a strict and well organised game plan. And in fact, I have an analogy which I think sums up this notion, and it goes as follows, okay, so hear me out, guys. Imagine you're a 100-metre sprinter with the hopes and dreams of becoming an Olympic gold medalist or even a world record holder. This can be analogous to any YouTuber who aspires to become recognised within this group of gameplay pub stompers. So visualise yourself at the start of the race. You notice your fellow competitors to your left and right. The competition is tough, but you as a person feel confident in your own abilities and potential. You approach the starting blocks.
On your marks. Set.
That was made a bit of bang, okay? Imagine the bang of the gun. Fuck's sake. Focus. Before you know it, the race is over. That was like an anticlimax, I know. You place last. Yeah, it gets even worse, okay? Keep me when I'm down, okay? You place last, and it comes as no surprise. Why? Well, out of the 8 sprinters that day, including yourself, there was only one sprinter in that lineup who doesn't take performance-enhancing drugs. You. So, you know, what am I getting at here? Well, in the same way performance-enhancing drugs improve an athlete's performance, so too does having support runners help a player's performance and, in turn, enable them a greater chance of you know, realising the gameplays they desire. Now, I know that analogy is somewhat elaborate and dramatic, but hopefully you see what my point is there, and it's something that I'm going to keep referring to when I cover this whole gameplay on steroid analogy. And it's funny because in a similar way in which steroids is linked to the whole peer pressure, so too is this somewhat evident in the community. And the problem is as follows: if you want to be recognised alongside these guys who fly the flag for what is deemed impressive in terms of Call of Duty YouTube gameplay, then it's only natural to feel pressured into following in the footsteps of such flag bearers. Think about it. You know, if this is what you really want, then the temptation will be strong, and when you submit, then it's an uphill battle to keep a grip of the reins. That's it. You need to keep taking this fix of steroids in order to keep afloat, stay current, and be remembered as one of these gameplay guys amongst the community. But, and I need to stress this, it's important to note here that I don't want you to think that I'm saying that the kind of guys who make this leap and post these 200 plus gameplays are bad players. I mean, the quintessential players which stand out here, such as, I don't know, Benny Central, Weagle, Jay Nasty, to name but a few, are all good pub stompers and players in their own right who can have and do play solo and still manage to achieve the gameplays which are justifiably so warranted of recognition from the community in my eyes. In fact, you may have noticed that there is some sort of trend in how the YouTube Gameplay Collective have tended to operate. I mean, at the start of Black Ops 2, as was the case with Modern Warfare 3, no one ran support runners, or at least to the level they do now, and as such it opened the floor to anyone and everyone who wanted to put their name on the map. As in Modern Warfare 3 with the likes of, for instance, J Nasty, Green Goblin HD, Mr. Exquisite XPL, there's a strange and somewhat unanimous communal agreement for some sort of like transition that takes place towards the latter end of the game's lifespan, wherein people suddenly decide to push the boundaries and find out what you can actually achieve in terms of gameplay. Black Ops 2 has been no different, as seen with the likes of Amp Clan, Weagle, Benny Central again, to name but a few. And I'd be lying if I didn't say it annoyed me whenever I read or hear a comment which states that players such as J Nasty or Weagle, for example, always and must rely on the support runners to get the gameplays, when if they did the research they discovered the very same trend I've observed after following them for a long time now. None more so is this stereotype more synonymous than with J Nasty, even though he's one of the only few during the very start of Modern Warfare 3 who began streaming and posting diverse and unique MOAB gameplays relative to the time. But back to what I was saying, so as a consequence, the guys who are playing solo trying to compete within the community slowly but surely gave way to the weight of these guys, these other guys that adopted this sort of steroid intake. And this is why I think you don't see the likes of the Mark of J, Fearcrads, iTemp, Insomulus, etc. posting the kind of gameplays that rival those that currently lead the pack. And as a spectator, the reaction from the viewers and the reception that this transition has made is only normal, and if anything, was predictable given what we saw at the end of Modern Warfare 3's duration. I mean, here's an example. We've seen a man run 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. Who wants to see a man run it in 5 juiced up to fuck on steroids? You know? Many people would want to see that. It's this whole appeal for the world's most, the world's fastest, which we find attractive and tempting. And as the song goes, push it to the limit. And when it comes to YouTube, I'm sorry, but you're in denial if you maintain you're not in YouTube for views and recognition. They've chose to go down this road, arguably because it's what the community has pressured them to do. And if you want to be known as a gameplay guy and you're posting, for argument's sake, 100 kill gameplays, for example, and then all of a sudden the standards switch to such that they are now, for instance, 150 kill gameplays, then I'm sorry, but you better step up your game if you want to survive and remain credible and worthy to wear that label of well-established pub stomper. It's as if you're forced to abide by the same standards that the community has now changed. You have to adapt, you have to evolve, and as a result of that, people are somewhat forced by such pressures into taking these quote-unquote steroids to meet the demands of the community and the standards set by the community. But the thing is, it's the people who employ these tactics in their content who are in the driver's seat. They are the captain directing the ship of YouTube gameplay standards and thus have the power and influence to suddenly flip the switch if they really wanted to. The question is, do they? Do they want to make that leap of faith? One of the things I've observed is that the top dogs for gameplay content back in Call of Duty Black Ops 1 days, namely Fearcrads, the Mark of J, the Game 360, to name but a few, these guys have slowly but surely, with each post-Call of Duty release, been pushed out of this premier gameplay bracket of YouTubers, it would seem. In fact, you could go as far as to say that it's as if they've been forced out. And why, you might ask, is it because they're bad players? No, not at all. Rather, it's the answer's far more simple. It's unlike many who have adopted this gameplay boosting tactic during Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 and have continued to implement it now during Black Ops 2's reigns, these players have decided to take a course of no action. They've not adopted this playstyle, even when many would argue, given their Call of Duty gameplay CV on YouTube, they'd quite easily hold their own if not lead the pack of those that choose to do so. I'm sure many people out there would love to see how Excalibur or Ronaldinho or even Quicker Than You, for instance, would perform running in with such support play, but at the end of the day it's clearly something that they just don't want to do. And somewhat frustratingly, in fact, it's as if this whole present YouTube gameplay culture is a product from Modern Warfare 3's Morbinator scene, wherein the balance of content fell heavily in favour of gameplay, usually consisting again of the world's most, the world's fastest title material, rather than commentary proficiency, eloquence and appeal. This in turn opened the floodgates to a whole host of new content makers that saw their chance at YouTube fame by uploading the ordinary MOAB gameplays, when in reality all it did was further saturate an already overly saturated market. Intent on capitalising on this window of opportunity whereby the community at the time favoured gameplay more so than orating skill, it came as no surprise that this gave the younger audience a confidence boost to purchase that HD PVR for themselves and brave the wonderful world of YouTube as a content maker. Whereas in previous Call of Duty reigns, many would feel content to remain as a spectator. Modern Warfare 3, on the other hand, provided many others that all-important nudge. And I suppose it's a matter of preference at the end of the day, but what would you prefer to watch? A 1-minute video consisting of a 60-second MOAB gameplay with music added and no commentary, or a 10-minute unedited gameplay containing a full commentary? After all, why watch one 10-minute long gameplay commentary when you could alternatively watch 3 different videos, each of shorter length and still totaling sub 10 minutes in duration? I mean, I always did and still do blame Modern Warfare 3, the game, specifically the MOB, and YouTubers during that period for slowly conditioning the Call of Duty YouTube audience by lowering viewer retention. And the same approach is still evident even now in Black Ops 2, albeit not as prevalent, but it still leaves you with that bitter taste, or at least I find it does. So, what do you think of these kind of videos, you might ask? Well, for a start, if you've been awake and following what I've been saying so far, I don't find the majority of these gameplays impressive nor worthy of the kind of praise that they're receiving, as they're just highly inflated given the circumstances they're attained under. And as for gameplays with poor or no commentary whatsoever, I'll be honest, I find that a lazy practice, particularly if done frequently, but you know, I guess I'm delving far too deep into this matter of commentary standards when I should really be sticking to the topic of gameplay standards. I just thought it's something worth highlighting given how connected both the commentary and gameplay side of things are and the relationship between them. In fact, just a side note, if you are interested, this is something I've touched upon in a previous video wherein I talked about the MOB effect on YouTube back in Modern Warfare 3 when it was nearing the end of its life cycle, but I'll bring this particular subject to an end here. Perhaps it's something I'll come back to in a future video. I don't know, we'll see. Now, having listened to me ramble on and on in this video, you might be sat there thinking to yourself, well, he says all this and yet he directly supports the videos from the guys he refers to employ such tactics in the content. Isn't he being hypocritical? Meh. And to those of you that think that, yes, I enjoy the YouTube videos, but not entirely necessarily for the reasons you might think. Take Wiggle, for example, seeing as I've mentioned him quite a bit in this commentary already. I'm not solely subscribed to Leyonn for his gameplays. I enjoy his commentaries and personality, so if he uploads a 200 plus gameplay running with a full party of support, the fact that I may like that video isn't exclusively because I find that gameplay and scoreline impressive. The same can be said for so many other YouTubers out there. JNAS is another poignant example. I find him to be a funny guy and an interesting character, though yes, I am fully aware of his reputation that he has and the way he conducts himself during his live streams, but in all honesty I can relate to that to an extent. I'm known to direct the occasional explicit remark, or two, towards my teammates from time to time. Somebody that know me would probably argue far too often, but depending on the standards you set yourself and those you strive towards, you personally and subjectively can find the game stressful. It's part and parcel of being competitive, and for me, I hate losing at things, even if it is a silly video game, which, let's be honest, Call of Duty is. As far as Justin goes, he's helped me out a lot in the past. I am very grateful for that, and the brief interactions we've had, he's always been cool with me. But at the end of the day, you're entitled to your opinion. All I'm saying is this is mine, okay? Do I prefer it when these sorts of guys post content which is less dependent on this team support? Yes, but again, just because they don't always wish to do so doesn't mean I won't enjoy the content and continue to support them as YouTubers for the reasons I've just mentioned. Remember guys, in this context, YouTube and YouTube content is more than merely the gameplay. So with that being said, I'll say a few words with regards multi-team now. So with Black Ops 2, the YouTube standards for gameplay has gone through multiple transitional phases from 100 pluses at the start of the game's release to 150 pluses and now onto this 200 plus kill scorelines. Throughout this period, the more credible, in my opinion, 100 plus non-lethal gameplayers have made an appearance, but I think it's safe to say that at the moment the main focus is on this 200 plus kill games and the road to that illustrious 300 kill gameplay. I did a commentary near the beginning of the game's drop wherein I talked about the direction I believe the community will take Call of Duty gameplays based on predominantly upon this Modern Warfare 3 support running mentality, going for the fastest mobs, the most mobs per game. And essentially guys, what it is, I predicted that it wouldn't be long before we'd start to see a return to this Modern Warfare 3 tactic as YouTubers competed for gameplay recognition and record rights once these high scoring and heavily score streak dependent gameplays became boring to a YouTube audience. However, if I'm being completely honest, I'd have to say that this transition period came later than I had initially anticipated. In fact, it's only as of the last month or so that these nuclear killer medals have become the latest craze for gameplay YouTubers to strive towards, and none more so as the arena for such the quest being as prominent than in the game mode known as multi-team, primarily of course multi-team hardpoint. Now, if you play multi-team hardpoint with two decent teammates who have thumbs who can play the game and know the hardpoints, then you should be able to call in a continuous supply of orbital VSATs between yourselves. Trust me, if you struggle to hit nuclears, try multi-team hardpoint. You'll be surprised how easy it is. With efficient farming of the hill, you'll be able to achieve your VSAT within seconds, and if that's not easy enough, seeing as the objective is to hold down a hardpoint, you know that the enemy will be heading towards either the hardpoint, which is live, or the next hardpoint within the rotation in the rare occasion that you don't have a VSAT in the air to support you. Not only that, but what you tend to find is that although you come across many sweaters who play this game type to boost the stats, more than likely they'll leave if things aren't going their way, thus paving the way for noobs to join and stay in your lobby and receive a spanking. So in summary then, nuclears, gun streaks, 10k plus scorelines, all far easier playing multi-team hardpoint, even when playing solo than playing Ground War in my opinion. On the face of it, getting a nuclear is somewhat of an achievement, but as with 100 plus gameplays consisting of support runners, likewise, multiple nuclear killer medals and gun streak gameplays in multi-team to me aren't impressive. So, as a viewer, it seems that you're left with two options. Either you watch these 200 plus kill gameplays with support runners, or on the flip side, you watch these double and triple nuclear killer medal gameplays in multi-team wherein they have a constant orbital VSAT in the air and on repeat to help them. One is gameplay on steroids, the other is gameplay in combat training, and so neither, in my opinion, is truly worthy of a degree of appreciation that they receive. So with all that being said, what's the moral of this commentary? If you want to be regarded as good at the game, then should you take steroids? Well, the problem is, you simply don't know where you stand within the community if you want to be regarded as a good player amid this pub stomping scene. Not the competitive scene, because that's a different domain, but you just don't know how well you stack up against other players in this public setting, because you simply can't compare yourself to these players which seem to be regarded as the best pub stompers on YouTube, because your environment isn't like their environment. It's as if their gameplays and their scorelines are mutations given this manipulation, if that makes sense. And sort of linking back to what I was saying previously, in a similar fashion whereby the game developers dictate how the player plays the game, part of the responsibility for how the community actually plays Call of Duty rests upon how YouTubers play it, and though you might not wish to accept such accountability, the fact still stands that as content makers, particularly if you're from this like gameplay camp, viewers look upon your videos not only for enjoyment and admiration for a player's ability, but also for tips, tricks and gameplay advice. For example, sometimes I wonder whether the whole one-man army noob pandemic would have been anywhere near as widespread, particularly in terms of how quickly it got introduced to the community, if it wasn't for that infamous Wings of Redemption Modern Warfare 2 tactical nuke gameplay commentary on Terminal, wherein he practically demonstrated how overpowered and effective using that exploit was. You know, you can't criticise viewers for trying to adopt and imitate what they see on the internet and the way they see their favourite YouTubers play. So, in other words, what I'm getting at is, it's the gameplay clique of YouTubers which influence the gameplay gaming community, and only when they change what's currently regarded as credible will the YouTube standards change, and in my opinion for the better. They are essentially the standard setters. However, the difficulty we now face is that given this introduction of quote-unquote drugs by a collective, they're always going to be passed around in the community, you know, if you can catch what I'm getting at. We already have abusers and a demand for supply, and so the problem which is already looming over us seems destined to only get worse. It sounds silly, but it would be like trying to ban cigarettes. It's that prominent and widespread now. Though it's possible in theory, actually putting it into practice is a whole different story altogether, and it's natural to assume that there would be an uproar from certain sectors within the community. But this all depends on whether or not the community firstly want to see change, and secondly, whether or not a community is willing to rally together and campaign for that change. Again, if we make it clear what we want to see, then as a YouTube content maker, you'd be making a pretty big mistake if you chose to ignore your market research. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, it's all fine and dandy saying all that, yeah, that fair enough, you made your points, but what do you find impressive? You seem to be going on and on about gameplay standards and this and that, and what you somewhat downgrade in the current YouTube gameplay standards, but what do you find impressive? And rather than picking out certain things, it's better for me to give you an actual example of someone that I think is doing it the right way, and that's Quicker Than You. And Quicker Than You is a guy which many regard within the community, even amongst these gameplay guys in YouTube. They regard this guy as a very impressive player, and he's a very impressive player, but what sets him aside from these other guys is the particular niche which he just dominates. This whole notion of playing solo, live commentaries, getting nuclears. He seems to be ticking the boxes for what I myself would deem as, yeah, that's worth, that justifies credibility and recognition, because that's impressive, because not many people, this is myself included, have access to a 9-man party, a 9-man strong, heavily stacked support running party that will hold their own and help me get gameplays. It's just, you know what I mean, not everyone has access to that. On the other hand, a lot of people, such as myself, play solo, and the amount of factors that we have to contend with, the amount of variables that we experience, that make this game boring and unbearable at times, he seems to demonstrate some sort of hope. Okay, some sort of hope for us, and a level at which you can compare yourself to, which it just, again, as I've stressed in the commentary, you can't do that. There's no sort of criteria of comparison that you can compare yourself to when you see these guys posting these extremely inflated score lines running in parties. But quicker than you, on the other hand, because he plays solo, again, the emphasis is on solo gameplays, you can do that. So if you want to know what I find impressive, that's a little bit of an insight into an example of someone that I think is doing it the way that it should be on YouTube. So hopefully you enjoyed this gameplay commentary, guys. If you've managed to last the entirety of this, of me rambling on this whole commentary, then I tip my hat to you. I very much appreciate the fact that you took your time out to listen to what I've got to say. I get the impression that my views, which I've tried my best to express in this video as clearly and succinctly as possible, even though it's a pretty long video, but I get the impression that they're felt by a lot of people within the community, and if so, let me know in the comment section below. I hope that I'm not the only one who thinks these sort of things. Again, I can't imagine that being the case, and even amongst some of the bigger YouTubers, which this commentary would arguably relate to, it'd be interesting to see if any of the points that I brought up they actually agree on. So, I don't know, let me know in the comment section below. I really would value any feedback that you can give. Again, if you managed to stick around this long, I owe you a BJ, and I believe that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. So I'm going to end the video right now. So again, thanks for watching, guys. You've been a wonderful audience. Take care, all the best, stay moist, use protection. Again, can't stress that enough. Use protection, people, and peace.